Big Patrick McGinley explaining why he lied to save Barney McGinley's pride.
This will play back to I see Barney made a slip there of a tape sitting in a car park last night, and he was saying all about me, and he has his every test he says he has me in his head. He can't get me out of it. But Barney, I never went in to be a good man at any stage, or never asked to be a good man at any stage. I needed friends more than I needed the name of a good man.
Those are very wise words, especially from one of the McGinleys.
But if you go back there, Barney, I don't think there's many slips or tapes made where I was knocked out, or nobody can put one up there where I was knocked out, or you won't hear anyone saying I was knocked out. But with you, Barney, with your glass jaw, there's loads of them out there to show you've been knocked down.
That's 100% the truth. Just simply do a Google search or YouTube search, and you can find them all.
But putting the fighting aside, Barney, you have come down in the ranks in every way. There about a few weeks ago, you were up and you were going to fight Mike Tyson. When you got your teeth done and you got a bit of a sunburn, you got up showing yourself off on the tape.
Yeah, but who took that serious? No one took it serious. So I doubt very much that Mike Tyson did.
But now you've come down in the ranks, you want to fight Pat's Willie.
I don't think he meant that as an insult to Pat's Willie.
So I don't know where you're going, Barney. You're losing your old head and you want to cop yourself on.
Those are the same words that Barney McGinley's father fighting Annie says on his message to his son Barney.
But going back a few years, Barney, you have a very short memory, son. You rung me up, you challenged young punk Doherty, Francie Doherty, the punk son.
Should you be bringing other people into your argument?
And you challenged him the same way, and you got me to come over to show you fair play. And I went to the people's place and I got involved in the place I was up anyway, and I told Punk to the challenge. There's going Punk's Francie accepted the challenge.
Of course, he would have accepting it. He is a Doherty after all.
So I stood there that day, and the fight was to be the next morning, Barney. If you remember it very well, there was thousands of people there, and the morning remember so well. So to make the long story short, Barney, the young Francie Doherty accepted the fight and Punk accepted it. So I get a phone call later on. The fight was to be in the morning. Me and Johnny Kyle was to show the fair play. Christy Stokes was to be a driver for you. And there was another man to drive for Francie Doherty. So the whole lot was arranged on the road, and we were around the site. There was a big lot of people there waiting to hear the results of the fight. And when the fight would be over, the fight was to go on. Francie Doherty gets into the car. I let Johnny Kyle bring him, and I went with Johnny Kyle out there. I went to Johnny Kyle, me and Johnny Kyle and Francie, and Christy was to come on the road and pick me up and Barney up. We were to go in two different separate cars. That was the agreement done anyway.
You don't need to go into such detail. No one cares who was going to go into which car.
Next, when the whole lot was agreed and the whole lot arranged for that late that evening or the following morning, Christy Stokes rings me and he says, Patrick, I have bad news. Barney is not fighting. Say, what do you mean Barney's not fighting? Says, him that done the challenge into the man. That's him that's the whole that done it, says. And he'd be an awful embarrassed when the me now says coming here and arranging the whole lot, and you were the coming on. I know, Patrick, I'm here, but he says,
well, it wouldn't be the first time for one of Annie's sons to call someone out and then to not turn up.
I can't do it. Say, what are we going to do? I don't know. He says, put it back till the morning, because Big Annie is mad with him, he says, and he's giving out him for challenge and not fighting, he says.
And Annie is 100% right. You don't send someone a challenge if you were too scared to fight them.
And he's taking a bad on me, he says. So that made long story short. So I said to Christy, I'd better go back up and put the fight back to tomorrow, see what you're doing. So
did the Dohertys not have the right to know that Barney was chickening out of the fight?
So I went back up to the Punk Doherty's place, and all the boys, even Berry's boys was there, the whole lot was there in the place. And we decided that the fight would be put back to the following morning. And I went down to the hotel and I stayed below in the hotel that night when Christy Stokes arrives, and he gives me the same news, not fighting, he says. Say, Christy, what are we going to do? With Patrick, he says, I don't know what you're going to do. He says, I know it's not bad, he says, but what we'll do is we'll go back up to the people and maybe, he says, we get the fight. Barney then, Annie wrong, and Annie says he's not coming. He's not coming, Patrick, he says. He lost his nerve, he says. So Annie says, I talk, I say, he's put me in a bad position. I'm going to come from long, for it's a long old journey, he says. And said, but say, what am I going to do? I don't know, he says. What you do, he says. I'm here, he says, and I'm not talking to him now, he says, he won't fight.
That would have been so embarrassing for fighting Annie to admit that his son was too chicken to fight.
So I made a long story, got back in, now back up to the punk's house, and we're walking around looking at the horse. And I said, Francie, I said, I didn't tell him, man, the fight was off because I didn't know whether he was going to come back up or not. So I spoke to Francie, and I said, Francie, look, we're only at the getting back together lately between the Dohertys and McGinleys, I said. And I says, me and you was the one brought them together. I said, no, we'll do, try and get the old, we'll get the old fight called off altogether. And I said, when we meet in Appleby and meet in Ballinasloe, we won't be nipping a other, the young fellas won't be nipping another.
But for all rights, his son won the fight. When Barney would not turn up and refuse to fight, then that means that he lost his fight.
The man fair play went back to his son, and his son said, no, Patrick, he says, Francie says, he said, I'm not being hard, and whatever you do, he says, we have great respect for you, which the men had, him and the young Kiwi fella, the whole on was there, Burry's was there. I'm not, he says, I want to fight now, he says, we get over it, he says, look, what can happen, he says, one of us has to win or one of us has to lose.
But what you're saying, he had already won the fight, but you never told him. Now will they have the same respect for you now after you admitting that you lied to them and stole a fight from them?
So I checked on for a good while, and I talked a good while, and Blacksmith was there, he was the uncle, and Francie was there, I caught him aside, and I explained to him, and he said, you know what, he says, Patrick is right, he says, it's not going to prove anything, he says, it's going to leave us. It'll only leave people, he says, all is tense again, other, he said, we are back together, he's explained the thing, and we have great respect for him, he says, whatever Patrick says, let it be.
Patrick, everyone had good respect for you as a good fair play man, but now that you just admitted that you fixed a fight, who can trust you as a fair play man again?
So I said, no, we'll do so, say, I'll take the blame, it says, for both sides, we'll call the fight off. So that was the end of the story, Francie, and the whole lot, the fight was called off, and I rings back up, Christy came up with me, and the man that he's reading for now and called on the names that took the blame and went and done the things for him to try and howl his name. We went and got the fight stopped, where the big cowardly shit wouldn't come out. Now, Francie Doherty was only a small little man. I won't tell you, but a small little man, about 5'5" or 6", but a good old heart, and he didn't want to stop. But between me, his father, and his uncles, we called Christy Stokes, we got him.
There's no point you blaming other men for what you did. The other men that you mentioned did not know that Barney was not going to fight, so he had already lost his fight without putting his hands up, and you talked them into calling the fight off just to try to save the pride of the McGinley name.
They let Barney go and not to pull him. So Barney, that was into the story of Barney. So Barney, you don't go around telling anybody what you are or not. And you're going around my name. You're putting out that you're going to come to me in Longford. Longford is a very small little town, you know where I live. And it's very easy to find me. Now, but in the meantime, Barney, you might have to come to me because I might find you quicker. So I think you'll better cop yourself on and get out of that van in the park and try and clean yourself up and take off them woman's socks of you with your bloated face and your football head and you're going around just calling names. You can call names to nobody. So just goodbye and good luck.
Do you think that big Patrick McGinley should have making this message to Barney McGinley, as I think he did more harm to his own reputation than Barney ever could?